Watuchi, Sutiha Eman, Ancheta Kusikuni Kaipim Kaspam, Kunam Ponchao, Quechua Collective pa clase Mantari Manisa, y Quechua Collective ha el Bachambian Kamachis Hakaran, y Yachachich Masi ha Rodrigo Kaipipas Kashanjin Kinaha Paiha Tukuspam, oh, Nuha Tukufti, Kaipas Rimarinha. So my name is Emma. I'm very happy to be here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Quechua Collective's classes. The Quechua Collective was founded by El Bambia this year in the first row. And my co-teacher is also here, Antonio Rodrigo Torres, and he is going to be speaking at the end. He's on Zoom. Okay, so yeah, like I said, I'm going to talk about the Quechua Collective's classes. So a little bit about us. So we are several teachers. There is myself, Emma, Rodrigo, who is again on Zoom, Elba, and Doug, who is not present today. And basically the Quechua Collective. Sometimes we also have other teachers coming and help us. Okay, so first I'm going to share a little bit about our experience and sort of how we started teaching, when we started, etc. So basically in the very beginning, in around 2015, we would teach only beginner classes, and we would do about one session per year. And we had an average of about 15 students per group, but this would obviously decrease little by little. Later we started teaching more beginner and intermediate classes. We did more sessions per year, about 3 sessions. We had an average of 10 students, and that's because obviously the further you go into learning, you have less students. And then around 2020, we started first doing online classes because the pandemic. So this allowed us also to reach more students, not only in New York. By the way, I forgot to say, the first classes were in person and they were here at the LA. So thank you, Ross, for hosting us around that period. But yeah, then we started doing online classes. We had more sessions per year, about 9 sessions. Again, an average of about 10 students, because the further you go into the learning, the harder it gets to retain students. And we had also an increase in the number of professors, about 5 professors, and more than 3 native speakers. So that's a bit about the evolution. So we have a really structured format for our one-on-one class at least. It's about a 2.5-hour class. We always start with a review, we do some grammar, then we do practice questions. We spend a lot of time just asking students questions so that they really know how to think about what we tell them and they can answer, so that when they speak with a native speaker, they're more at ease. Then we also correct the homework. The students always have some homework to do. And then we do some activities. So this can be music, this can be just another speaking activity, it may be students doing a presentation, it varies. And basically for the first year of Quechua, at least this is what we do for 6 sessions. And so basically it covers a whole academic year from September to about July. Okay, so our teaching method. So we use many different resources, and I think we're going to talk about the lack of resources in general with indigenous languages, endangered languages. But basically we have to create a lot of our resources. So we create PowerPoints. We also make our PowerPoints very interactive. As I said, we do practice questions, but even in our grammar, every time we teach something, we always ask students to answer a question afterwards so that they're really active and that they're really ready to speak. So we use a textbook that contains all the homework for the whole year, so that students can also start learning in advance. So we do a lot of speaking, as I said, activities, whether in the grammar or in the activity at the end of the lesson. We do, as I said, review questions. And overall, we do have a year-long syllabus so that students know exactly what they're going to learn and when, and it allows them also to, if they have to skip a class or if they might not attend a whole 6-week session, they can always keep track of where they're at and join our class later on. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit more about the takeaways from our classes, and this is going to be based on feedback that the students gave us and give us throughout our teaching. We always send them a form at the end of every 6-week session to know how we're doing, what we can improve, if they have ideas. Okay, so yeah, student feedback. So when we asked students if they feel like they achieved their goals when they joined our class, we have a majority of students saying that they do, and we asked them why they think they do. So people say, self-discipline, they did the work, they did the homework. One person said, I have tried on and off to relearn Quechua, so it's very common for students to try and learn on their own before they actually join the class. So this person says that she has tried on and off, and this is the first time that she's been able to sustain her practice. And it's also due to the accountability of going to class with other students. People who say they didn't achieve their goals say that they have, one person has a hearing comprehension, and it's true that our classes are very much based on speaking, listening and speaking, not just writing things down, because our goal is really not that students write Quechua, but really that they be able to interact with Quechua speakers. So it's true that in this aspect, we can lose some students or make it more difficult for some students to follow our classes. We do have a little bit of a problem. Sometimes we tend to go into Spanish because obviously it's easier to teach Quechua through Spanish, and my co-teacher, Rodrigo, is more at ease with Spanish. So yeah. Other feedback, so in terms of the pace of the course, a good 50% of students say that it's okay. Some people say it's too fast, some people say it's too slow. Most people think we have a good grammar to speaking ratio. Some people think we have too much grammar, some people think we speak too much. Then in terms of the quality of our teaching, most people say that a lot of students think they have a lot of opportunities to ask if they don't understand something. Most people say that they understand, that they receive clear explanation when they do ask. And so sometimes, so as I said, we base our classes a lot on speaking. We call on students basically all the time. And so we ask our students not whether they feel nervous, but whether they think, in the beginning we did that, but then we ask them whether they think that they're positively challenged when they're being called at, and they say that yes. So if in the beginning they say, okay, yeah, I'm very nervous, I'm not sure I like it, but actually almost everybody says that they benefit from it. So that's a good point. So one recurring problem we have, and we see that with student retention, is that when a student skips one class and another, usually we tend to not see them in class again. And that's really, really sad. And so we ask them, what happens if you miss a class? Do you watch the recording, do the homework, review the material? And we're lucky that more than 50% do, but the others don't. And I think this is one of the reasons why sometimes they will drop out at some point. So yeah, as you can see, when we ask them, okay, if you miss a class, do you miss the following one? And some people say that they do actually sometimes. So this is the beginning of the end sometimes. Okay, so we wondered, why do students skip class, right? I mean, it's not that they don't learn anymore, it's not that they're not motivated. And that's precisely what happens. Students just miss class because they have other commitments, family issues, things like that. We do have this very small portion of students saying that they feel behind and unmotivated, and that's why they don't come. But most of the time, it's really just other commitments. So this is all for student feedback. And so based on this feedback, we had reflection with the other students, how what can we do with our classes to improve our teaching, to make sure that more students can really get to learn Quechua and speak Quechua with their families and their relatives and people they know in the Aziz. And so it feels like the main challenges with teaching Quechua is having students who can get this discipline of keeping on track with the material, because we do have a group, and it's not just personalized classes where we can adapt to every single student that's there. The challenge would be time, like making sure that students keep on track. Also, a challenge that is very specific to our course, we had a student saying that she had a hearing comprehension. So it's true that one of the challenges is that we really emphasize the speaking aspect of our classes. We don't want students to just be able to write dissertations in Quechua, because that would not help them communicate with their families and loved ones. So that's another challenge. And also the last challenge would be just like trying to really teach Quechua in English only, because a lot of heritage speakers based in the US might not even speak Spanish because their parents didn't transmit obviously Quechua, but not Spanish either. So that's another challenge of teaching Quechua, at least here in New York and online around the New York community. It's just really able to teach Quechua only in English, or even only in Quechua. We'll talk more about that later. So basically, yeah, there's no one-size-fits-all way of teaching, and we try to do our best and adapt to student feedback, but it's not always as good as we would like it to be. Another challenge we found, and this didn't come up in the feedback maybe because we didn't ask the right questions, but we did notice that sometimes there were discussions around gender in Quechua, because Quechua is a very gendered language. In the way you refer to people, you always say, you always refer to people as your siblings, and this is gendered twice. Basically, you have to take into account your own gender and the person's gender to choose the right term. So we noticed that sometimes some students might be a little bit like put off by this. So it's been a challenge just finding the right way to communicate this information, and also to find alternatives, non-gender terms that we are using in this class, even though speakers might not necessarily use them, and explain basically that this is going to be the way we're going to work, to not offend anyone in class. Obviously, there's always the challenge of variance. I didn't really introduce Quechua at the beginning. I'm sorry I didn't think about doing that, but basically we focus on teaching Southern Quechua. So it's a variant of Quechua that is made up of even more variants, but basically Southern Quechua is spoken in the north of Bolivia and the south of Peru, around Ayacucho and around Cusco, and we do focus more on the Cusqueño variant. At least this is the variant that our textbook is written in. But it's always a challenge when we do activities and we make people listen to a song and they use vocabulary that is different because it's in Bolivia and it's actually from Aymara, or the pronunciation is a little bit different. So sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge when we do show like not textbook material, and that students might be a little bit lost. But again, it didn't really come up in the feedback. That's really something that we were thinking as teachers when we introduce new material. There's always the challenge of the resources. As I said, all the resources we use are ones we have created ourselves, because we couldn't really just like go on Google and find actually there are textbooks and things like that, but it's always difficult to just appropriate ourselves, like use the material as we want. We would like to, there's not enough options basically, so we have to tweak everything we find to make it correspond to our needs. And the last challenge was student enrollment. So as I said, students tend to be more numerous in the beginning and then less and less. And the problem is that the less students you have, the dynamic is going to be, like the dynamic is not so well at some point. If you have only 3 or 4 students, it might be a little bit hard to have as much interaction as in the beginning. Okay, but there are opportunities in teaching Quechua. And the main opportunity, I think, is the sense of purpose. Like, people are here because they're really motivated. They want to learn Quechua for a reason. They're not just here for credit, or they're not just here, I don't know, to find a job with this language skill. So really, I think this is the main opportunity, and the reason why, even though there are challenges, like there's really hope that we can improve in the long run. Another opportunity was kind of after the pandemic, or during the pandemic rather, there was really an increase in student enrollment, and that's because a lot of people were looking for things to do from their homes. But we noticed that, it really got more people interested in Quechua, and more people started learning, so that was really nice. And I added also sense of belonging, because that's some feedback also we had from students, is that there's a lot of people who didn't necessarily have connection to other Andean people, like other people with Andean heritage in the US. And so through learning Quechua, they also found a community. It's very common, or actually I think in every single session, students on their own will start after a couple of classes. Okay, can we start a WhatsApp group? Can we connect with students outside of classes? So that was something really that we're really happy to find out every single year when we start teaching a new group. Okay, so I think some key takeaways about our experience is that earlier when we asked, whether students were okay with the pace, or whether they felt like they achieved their goals, A lot of them said that they did, but some of them, and also obviously not every single student that followed our classes filled in the feedback. So some of them do drop out, and so it feels like, as much as we want everybody to keep on learning, we cannot retain everyone. And I think this is just due to students having different expectations. There's so many different profiles of students, and we only have a very limited amount of resources. So whether it be time, whether it be material resources, everything. So that's, I think, the key takeaway. And now I wanted to talk a little bit about what we want to do in the future based on this experience and our aspirations for the teaching of Quechua in the Quechua Collective. So what we would like to do is to focus even more on speaking, because even though we make students speak a lot, it feels like they still, when they're stuck, they still have this idea, oh, I need to write it down to understand what was said or how to respond. So this is what we want to do. We want to introduce a little bit more speaking, or at least remove a little bit more the text from our method of teaching. What we'd like to do also is to teach through culturally relevant material. So as I said, we built all our material ourselves, and that's because some textbooks or even most of the material we find doesn't necessarily represent Andean culture really. Like for example, if we have a dialogue with two people, we'll have very neutral people, or if we want to do our material ourselves, we'll go and Google some man and woman talking, and we'll have a blonde woman or like a tall white guy, and we don't really want to teach with this material, so it's been really hard, but we've been trying to create our own material in this sense, that is really culturally relevant. And something else we'd like to do, and this ties back with focusing on speaking, is we already started teaching more immersively, like saying teaching things that can be understood without things that can be understood intuitively. We teach them only in Quechua. Like we don't go through English because we think students can understand anyway, so it gives them more exposure to the language. And so I think this is also going to help with focusing more on speaking. And obviously we use culturally relevant material, illustrations and things like that to make our teaching more comprehensible, let's say. It's not comprehensive, it's comprehensible actually, comprehensible input. So these are our main aspirations, and I wanted to show you an extract, if we still have a little bit of time, a little bit, of an example of teaching basically through comprehensive input, focusing on speaking and with culturally relevant material. So this is an exercise that's actually the homework that we give students in our latest one-on-one session. And I think it doesn't work if I click here, so I'll open it here. But basically the homework used to be written, and now the homework is, I don't know, I think I need to answer on screen. And now the homework more and more is just, we ask students to listen to an audio file or a video, and to answer by recording themselves in audio and sending us the audio. So I'll show, it's this one, and I'll share the other as well. Okay. So I think. Okay, so this is Rodrigo, my teacher, and here he's recording himself with prompts that students will have to answer in their homework. And hopefully, because this is the very first homework, maybe you can understand what he's saying and understand what we mean by comprehensible input, culturally relevant material, and just speaking, focus on speaking.
Kaya ka warning kairi kharicho kaya ka orkocho Kayqa Chile suyuchu. Kayqa Lima llaqtachu. Imataq kay.
Yep, and that's pretty much it. So I'm not going to play the audio from the students, but believe us that students do send us the homework in audio format, and that they really enjoy this kind of exercise because it really helps them actually speak and not just read and write in Quechua. So that's it. Kunam kha Rodrigo, Chabi Chokashinki. Oh no, it feels like he's not there anymore. Oh. Maybe he lost his connection. Well, that's too bad. He was going to speak a little bit more.
You can try to have him come back during the question
Yeah, if
time.
he comes
He can
back.
come back.